Come closer, pull your chair. Let me tell you a story that will make your ears ring and your mouth hang open like a fish gasping for air. This is the tale of the two sons of Chief Okoro of Abia State, Obinna and Kelechi. Obinna, the elder, was a sleek city man, a major contractor in Lagos whose ties were tighter than a debtor's throat, always smelling of foreign cologne and raw ambition. Kelechi, the younger, was the quiet one, a patient and respected history teacher who lived simply in the village, diligently tending to their father's most prized legacy, a sprawling 20-acre piece of ancestral land. This land was the heart of their lineage, priceless not just because of the rich cocoa plantation that grew abundantly on the fertile soil, but crucially because it contained the sacred Aku shrine, the traditional burial ground for their entire clan going back 4 generations. When Chief Okoro died in 2022, he left a simple, unassailable will, read out in the village hall. The land must remain with the family, divided equally between the 2 sons, with neither son permitted to sell his share without the other's written consent. Obinna arrived from Lagos not in deep mourning but in a 3-piece suit, his eyes glinting like freshly minted naira coins. He looked at the earth his father loved and saw only square footage. Kelechi saw their past and their collective future. Hey, sorry to interrupt your listening for just a moment. If this story is speaking to you so far, I'll be really grateful if you'd subscribe and support the channel. It helps me keep creating more stories like this for you. Thank you. Obinna cornered Kelechi the day after the final funeral rites, while the scent of gunpowder from the traditional salute still hung faintly in the humid air. Kelechi, Obinna began, his voice smooth as filtered palm oil, dripping with condescension. This pitiful teacher's salary you earn, it is utterly ridiculous. Look at this land, brother. I have Lagos developers, major foreign investors offering me 500 million naira for a joint venture. I will sell my half. I will give you 60 million cash for your own half. You take that money, you move your family to Abuja, you open a modern private school, and you become a chief, a man of respect. Kelechi shook his head slowly, his hands deep in the soil where he was patiently planting a new palm sapling. Brother, the land is not about money. Papa's words were clear. It is a legacy, a covenant. Besides, the Aku shrine is here. We cannot sell our ancestors, Obinna. They are watching. Obinna scoffed, flicking an imaginary piece of dust from his gleaming imported shoes. Ancestors don't pay bills, Kelechi. They are dust and memory. You are a sentimental fool. 60 million naira is more money than you will see in 10 lifetimes of teaching history. Kelechi stood up, his gaze steady, his face set with disappointment. My consent is not for sale, Obinna. Find another way to be rich, because this land is where I will raise my children. Obinna returned to Lagos, but the image of the 20 acres, the future site of the Okoro Legacy Estate, was burned into his mind. His resentment against Kelechi's moral superiority festered like a tropical sore. He was not a man who accepted refusal. He was a Lagos contractor. He specialized in making problems, especially familiar ones, disappear. He put a plan into motion, a scheme so cynical it would shame a politician. He found a corrupt, desperate land registry official in Umuahia and a ruthless local lawyer named Barrister Eze, a man whose integrity was as empty as his dusty law books. Obinna paid them an exorbitant sum, money he considered a mere investment in his future. The plan was simple and utterly brazen. Barrister Eze would create a fraudulent, backdated deed of assignment, falsely claiming that Chief Okoro, in a moment of supposed lucidity a month before his death, had assigned the entire 20-acre parcel to Obinna alone, citing Kelechi's lack of financial capacity to manage the estate. The land registry official would then lose the original legally sound will and officially replace it with the forged deed. It was a perfect, silent coup executed in the shadows of the law. Within a month, the ancestral land, the rich cocoa plantation, and the sacred Aku shrine were legally and unilaterally transferred to Mr. Obinna Okoro, sole owner. He had cheated his brother out of his birthright, his home, and his sacred heritage. Kelechi, busy teaching the rise and fall of great empires to primary school pupils, knew nothing of the sharp knife twisting in his back. Kelechi found out on a Monday morning that should have been peaceful. He was sitting on the veranda of his small cottage, grading history papers under the shade of a flourishing palm tree, his wife Neka braiding their daughter's long, dark hair. He was content. Then he heard it, the deep, guttural, grinding roar of a heavy-duty excavator engine. The sound was alien, terrifying, and violently out of place in the quiet rhythm of the village. He dropped his red pen and his notepad and ran out onto the main road. Standing at the entrance of the ancestral land was a huge yellow construction behemoth, its massive metal claw resting ominously on the rich, dark soil. A small man in a hard hat held a clipboard, directing a team of security guards in stiff, new uniforms. "What are you doing here?" Kelechi shouted, running up to the foreman, his breath ragged. "This is private family land. You are trespassing." The foreman, a muscular man with a face like granite and a total lack of human empathy, didn't even look up. "Orders from the owner, Mr. Obinna Okoro, contractor and CEO. We are clearing the site for the new estate. You need to vacate the property immediately. This land is now private commercial property." He put a crumpled photocopy of the fraudulent deed of assignment into Kelechi's hand. Kelechi's eyes blurred as he read the names, the fictitious dates, and the fabricated signature of his revered father. "It's a lie," he screamed, shaking the paper. "A complete forgery. The will divides the land. You cannot do this." The security guards moved in then, professional and cold, pushing Kelechi back with polite but firm force, effectively cordoning off the land he had believed was his own. "We have legal papers, sir. You have nothing but emotion. Please step aside." Kelechi stood on the roadside, watching in heartbroken horror as the yellow claw swung into action. The first thing it attacked was the magnificent, ancient cocoa tree his grandfather had planted almost a century ago. The tree that had been the cornerstone of their family's financial stability for 3 generations. The sound of the thick, heavy trunk tearing out of the ground was a sickening primal scream, silencing the village birds. "Stop! Stop! That tree is alive!" Kelechi pleaded, tears streaming down his face, the dust of the destruction stinging his eyes. They quickly demolished the small wooden teacher's cottage where he and Neka had raised their children, reducing it to splinters in minutes. Then the excavator paused ominously before moving towards the sacred burial ground, the Aku shrine, marked by 3 ancient towering Iroko trees. Kelechi, fueled by a desperate ancestral rage, lunged, pushing past the professional security guards. He collapsed at the foot of the shrine, hugging the massive cold trunk of the center Iroko. "You cannot touch this. This is a sacred place. You will awaken the ancestors. You will unleash a curse." The foreman hesitated, a distinct flicker of fear crossing his face, but a harsh, authoritative command barked over the radio. The excavator claw slammed into the nearest Iroko tree. The village watched in horrified, stunned silence. The Iroko tree fell with a thunderous, earth-shaking crash, shattering the fragile peace of the village and the heart of Kelechi. It was a sound that marked the end of an era. The construction crew quickly cleared the shrine, callously digging up the earth that held the remains of their father and their grandfather, preparing the ground for the deep concrete foundation of a new luxury estate. Kelechi, Nneka, and their two small children were left standing on the dusty roadside with only a few hastily packed bags of clothes and a crumpled, legally useless copy of a forged document. The villagers, though deeply sympathetic to Kelechi's plight, were too afraid of Obina's immense wealth and powerful connections to intervene or even offer refuge. Kelechi tried every avenue to fight. He traveled to the state capital, Umuahia, but the land registry official, having been well paid, claimed the original will was irretrievably lost in a mysterious flood. Barrister Eze smiled patronizingly in his face during a brief contemptuous confrontation and immediately threatened a crippling defamation lawsuit. Kelechi was cornered, defeated, and profoundly betrayed by his own flesh and blood. He took the small savings Nneka had accumulated from selling dried mangoes and palm oil at the market, packed his family, and moved to a tiny, suffocating one-room apartment in a crowded Lagos slum, a place where the air was thick with smoke and desperation, swallowed by the same uncaring city that had corrupted his elder brother. "The land is gone, Nneka," Kelechi whispered to his wife on the long, dusty bus ride. "But the ancestors are not dust. They are in the ground and they have been disturbed." In Lagos, Obina was riding the glorious crest of the wave. The land clearance was complete, the legal roadblocks were neutralized by his swift action, and the substantial funding for the Okoro Legacy Estate was secured, marking him as a business titan. He moved into a shimmering glass and steel penthouse in Banana Island, the exclusive island of the ultra-rich, sealed and insulated from the noise and desperation of the poor. He drove a powerful black Rolls-Royce Phantom and drank vintage French champagne from crystal glasses that cost more than Kelechi's yearly salary. He would occasionally think of Kelechi, the quiet teacher, now surely struggling in some dusty, forgotten corner of the city, and he would scoff. He made his choice, Obina would tell his friends at the exclusive club. He chose sentimentality and poverty. I chose power and wealth. Life is a business transaction. He felt a momentary flicker of guilt, a tiny needle prick of conscience, but it was effortlessly suppressed by the intoxicating, dizzying rush of power and success. He was, in his mind, a god in his own financial world. To be extra cautious, he even hired a spiritual consultant, a powerful alpha from Senegal, who performed a complex ritual right on the Lagos penthouse balcony to bind the spirits of the Abia land and prevent any potential supernatural backlash. He believed he had covered all his bases, legal, financial, and spiritual. The foundation for his new life, he was certain, was perfect. Then, the strange thing started happening. It began simply, innocuously, as a subtle disturbance in the luxurious silence. Obina's penthouse was an architectural marvel, fully soundproofed and sealed against the chaos of the city. But one night, exactly 3 weeks after the demolition, he woke up to a faint, rhythmic sound that cut through the silence. Clank, thud, clank, thud. It was the unmistakable, terrifying sound of a shovel digging into heavy earth. He sat bolt upright in his massive, opulent bed, his heart pounding erratically against his ribs like a trapped bird. The sound was unmistakably coming from inside the walls of his apartment or directly beneath the polished floor. He walked around the huge penthouse, switching on every light, every lamp. The sound, unnervingly, stopped whenever he was close to the source. Clank, thud. He ran to the living room, frantic. The sound was louder there, beneath the pristine white Italian marble. He got on his knees, pressing his ear to the cold stone. Silence. He retreated to the kitchen for a glass of water. Clank, thud. The sound resumed instantly, directly under the expensive granite countertop. It was the steady, measured, deliberate work of a single, slow-moving shovel hitting the earth. A faulty water pipe, he desperately rationalized, his voice trembling uncontrollably. It must be a maintenance crew working below in the dead of night. He called his security manager, who confirmed the building was quiet, silent as a grave, no digging. But as Obina hung up the phone, the digging sound intensified, moving now with a frantic, almost desperate rhythm, as if someone or something was trying to claw its way out of a newly dug grave right there in his penthouse. Obina spent the rest of that night and the entire following day wide awake, pacing his penthouse, clutching a bottle of expensive untouched whiskey, watching the sun rise and fall over the Atlantic Ocean. He told himself it was stress, paranoia, or too much champagne. But the next day, the weirdness escalated into something visible and utterly terrifying. He was in his Rolls Royce, being driven through the relentless traffic to his Ikoyi office tower. The traffic was bumper to bumper, the Lagos heat oppressive and suffocating. He was looking out the tinted window, casually admiring his own reflection, when he saw it. Through the glass, standing solid and unmoving right in the middle of the 6-lane expressway, was a fully grown Iroko tree. Not a small sapling. A massive ancient tree, its thick, deeply grooved trunk wider than a car, its massive roots appearing to spread across the hot asphalt. The tree was dark, almost black, and gave off an unnatural, freezing cold that seemed to penetrate the car's air conditioning. Obina's driver, a veteran of Lagos chaos, drove right through the spot, completely oblivious. The cars around them didn't swerve or brake. The tree was visible only to Obina. He blinked, rubbing his eyes violently with both hands. The tree was instantly gone, just the hot asphalt and the relentless, suffocating traffic. He arrived at his office in a cold sweat, recognizing the tree immediately. It was the central, sacred Iroko from the Aku shrine, the one he had ordered demolished. It was here, and it was demanding his attention. He fled his board meeting, claiming sudden illness, and locked himself in his private, sterile washroom. He splashed cold water violently on his face, staring into the mirror, convinced he was having a psychotic break. He was pale, sweating, and shaking uncontrollably. He dried his face with a plush white towel. As he looked back into the mirror, seeking his own image for reassurance, he saw not his reflection, but a swirling cloud of fine brown dust suddenly materialize in the air, encircling his head. He gasped, stepping backward, slamming his back against the wall. The dust settled instantly, coating the pristine white marble countertop and the mirror surface. Obina leaned forward, sniffing the air tentatively. The dust was thick and incredibly earthy, but it carried a faint, sweet, unmistakable scent. Cocoa? Not the manufactured processed cocoa of expensive chocolate bars, but the raw, musky, slightly acidic smell of freshly harvested cocoa beans drying slowly in the sun. The exact, powerful smell that used to fill the air of the ancestral land in Abia during the harvest season. He felt a sharp, penetrating, stabbing pain in his chest, right where his heart was. The cocoa trees were uprooted. The shrine was desecrated. The ancestors are not just angry, they are living evidence. The terrifying, clear realization hit him. The land spirit had not been bound by the Alpha's cheap ritual. It had been provoked, and it was haunting him, not with screams, but with the very elements he had destroyed. Obina tried desperately to ignore the terrifying signs, but the collapse of his physical world was mirroring the collapse of his sanity. He called the head construction manager on the Okoro Legacy Estate project in Abia. The manager, Mr. Benson, usually a boastful, cocky man, answered with a voice that was barely a whimper. "Sir, the foundation, it is collapsing. We are not talking about sinking, sir. We are talking about splitting and disassembling. We pour the concrete mix, we reinforce it with steel, and within hours it cracks into small, perfectly neat pieces. We dig a trench for the piping, and it fills up overnight with dry, undisturbed earth. It's like the ground itself is actively rejecting the building, sir. It won't hold the lie." Obina gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white, the cocoa dust still clinging to his nostrils. What is the spiritual activity, Benson? What are you seeing? The manager lowered his voice to a terrified whisper. The Iroko, sir. The 3 ancient trees we cleared for the shrine. Every single morning, we find 3 large, perfectly carved, heavy Iroko logs lying exactly where the trees used to stand. They are too heavy to move. They just reappear overnight. We check the CCTV. We see nothing. It is a sign, sir. A terrible, silent sign of the spirits. Obina dropped the phone, gasping for air. The 3 Iroko logs were the 3 ancestors he had displaced, physically blocking his profit. The digging sound he heard was the earth refusing to hold the weight of his lie. Obina was now too terrified to sleep or even sit still. He became a frantic shadow in his own luxurious penthouse, watching the shadows lengthen and twist. A few days after the Iroko log report, a letter arrived, slipped mysteriously under his front door, a strange feat considering the 6 layers of security. It was a formal, old-fashioned letter, written on thick, creamy parchment, sealed with the traditional red wax of the clan. It was addressed from the village head of their ancestral home in Abia. Obina opened it with violently shaking hands. The letter didn't speak of money or land ownership. It spoke only of custom and consequence. Obina, son of Okoro, you have committed the great sacrilege of defiling the Aku shrine. The land is grieving. We see the logs. We hear the sorrow of the earth. The ancestors demand a physical act of reverence before the foundation can be set. They demand the blood of the lineage to be present and pure. You must come home and perform the Itu log, the cleansing of the home ritual. The village head had added a chilling personal note at the bottom, written in thick, deliberate ink. You cheated your brother out of the earth and his peace. Now the earth is coming for you, Obina. Come home and confess or be swallowed. Obina knew the ritual. It was an ancient, powerful rite requiring true contrition, a total spiritual cleansing, and a public humiliating confession before the entire community. He couldn't confess. His Lagos empire was built entirely on that single lie.
The strange occurrences started affecting his physical state with frightening severity. He began to shiver uncontrollably, convulsing even in the warm, humid Lagos sun and the controlled climate of his air-conditioned penthouse. The doctors he frantically consulted could find absolutely no medical reason for the deep, constant chill. His blood pressure was fine, his heart was healthy, his vitals were perfect, but the chilling cold was deep, penetrating, like the bone deep cold emanating from the ghostly Iroko tree he had seen on the expressway. He finally realized the shivering was not physical, it was an ancestral cold, a spiritual condition. The chill was emanating directly from the violated earth of the Ako shrine, reaching across states to freeze the very spirit of the thief. The muffled digging sound was now constant, a low, maddening, grinding rhythm in the background of his life, driving him towards psychosis. He couldn't eat. He couldn't focus. He was a wealthy, powerful prisoner in his own palace, haunted by his own sin. The fear became a tangible, living thing. He tried one final desperate act. He sold the Rolls-Royce Phantom, hoping that the large, luxurious sign of his extreme greed would finally appease the spirit. It did not. The digging continued. Obina finally broke, a shell of the confident contractor he once was. He had to find Kelechi, he had to beg for forgiveness, and he had to reverse the curse before the land consumed him entirely. Obina, stripped of his luxury car, drove his plain, discreet black Toyota Camry to the sprawling Lagos slum where Kelechi and his family were suffering in poverty. The stark contrast was a physical slap in the face. Banana Island, where he lived, was a world of manicured hedges and polished chrome. The slum, however, was a chaos of open gutters, overflowing waste, the sickening smell of stale food and desperate poverty, and the relentless noise of a forgotten people. He navigated the treacherous maze of broken alleys until he found Kelechi's address, a dilapidated block of apartments where clotheslines crisscrossed the narrow alleyways like spider webs. He climbed the dark, broken stairs, the smell of poverty assaulting his senses. He found Kelechi's tiny one-room apartment. He knocked hesitantly. Kelechi opened the door. He looked thin, worn by hardship, but there was a quiet, unshakable dignity in his eyes, even in the oppressive heat and gloom of the slum. He was patiently teaching his two small children using a worn, patched blackboard on the wall. "Obina," Kelechi said, his voice flat, devoid of surprise or malice. "You look like a ghost. Has the Lagos sun finally proven too much for the big contractor?"
Obina stumbled into the stifling room, collapsing onto the only available piece of furniture, a rickety plastic stool. He was unable to meet his brother's clear, steady gaze. "Kelechi, I am ruined. I am being haunted by the land. The digging won't stop. The logs are blocking my sight. The cocoa dust is in my house. The cold, it's everywhere. The land spirit is after me. It won't let me build anything. The foundation is splitting apart. I came to beg you. I came to crawl. Forgive me, Kelechi. I cheated you. I forged the papers with Barrister Eze. I paid the official. I sold Papa's grave and his memory." The confession, rushed, desperate, and filled with a raw, agonizing truth, tumbled out of him. Kelechi listened, his face impassive, showing no flicker of triumph. His wife, Neka, stood quietly by the door, holding their youngest child, her expression a mixture of pity and weariness. "We know, Obina," Kelechi said, simply, his voice low and calm. "I knew the very hour they started digging up the earth of the Aku shrine. I didn't need a lawyer to confirm you were a thief. The truth of a brother is written not in paper, but in the wind and in the soil, and the land does not forget." Obina fell to his knees on the dusty cement floor, uncaring about his expensive suit. "Take it back! Take the whole 500 million! Take the entire estate! Just tell me how to stop the digging! I can't sleep! I can't breathe! I am dying of cold!" Kelechi looked down at his broken elder brother. He didn't gloat or seek revenge. He felt a deep, profound sorrow, the heavy grief that only comes from the most intimate of familial betrayals. "The money is tainted and corrupted, Obina. It is poison. I will not touch it. You think the ancestors want money? They are spirits. They want truth and restitution. They want the integrity of the Okoro name restored. You destroyed my home, yes, but you destroyed something much bigger, our covenant and your own soul." Kelechi walked slowly to his worn blackboard. He picked up the piece of chalk. He didn't draw a curse or a protective charm. He wrote a list, clear and simple, with the precision of a teacher dictating history. 1. Legal reversal of fraudulent deed. 2. Public confession to the village council. 3. Restoration of the sacred shrine site. "This is the only way to silence the shovel, Obina," Kelechi said, turning back to his brother. "You must go back to Omuahia. You must tell the land registry the full truth. You must expose Barrister Eze and the corrupt official. You must sign over your legitimate half-share immediately to the village council as an irrevocable trust for the shrine. And then you must go to the land and perform the Itu law ritual in front of the whole village. Only the truth can rebuild what the lie broke."
Obina stared at the list, his future laid out on the worn blackboard. Public confession, exposing his crime, it meant total financial and social ruin, the complete destruction of the contractor Obina persona. But the muffled, maddening digging sound in his ears was louder than any boardroom argument now. He chose the painful path of peace over the temporary ease of reputation. He stood up slowly, his body aching, humbled, defeated, but with a strange new clarity of purpose. "I will do it, Kelechi. I will do everything on that board." He turned to Neka, his eyes filled with genuine remorse. Neka, I am deeply sorry that my greed made you and my nephew homeless. I am sorry for every insult I threw at Kelechi. Please forgive me." Neka nodded, tears welling up in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "Go and restore your father's house, Obina. That is the only forgiveness you need from us." Obina left the slum that day. He drove straight to Umuahia. He went to the land registry office, and in front of the shocked, horrified officials, he demanded the immediate reversal of the fraudulent deed, detailing Barrister Eze's corruption. He signed documents transferring his legitimate half-share of the land, not to Kelechi personally, but to a newly created, legally binding Chief Okoro Ancestral Land Trust, to be managed jointly by Kelechi and the respected village head. He was systematically stripping himself of the stolen wealth, piece by piece, setting his spirit free. The news hit the Lagos business community like a sudden thunderclap. Obina Okoro, the celebrated contractor, was liquidating his assets, confessing to egregious land fraud, and exposing his own legal counsel. Barrister Eze was immediately arrested by the anti-corruption police. The land registry official was suspended and faced prosecution. The entire Okoro Legacy Estate project collapsed completely, leaving a crater of debt. Obina was financially ruined, his bank accounts frozen, but the deep, existential shivering stopped instantly. The persistent, maddening sound of digging disappeared. He felt a profound, exhausting, and liberating calm settle over him. He spent the last of his clean personal money on organizing the required Itu law ritual, ensuring it was done with the utmost respect and traditional seriousness. He sent a formal invitation on the official family seal to the village head, every elder, and every kinsaman. The cleansing ceremony was to take place on the ancestral land, plot 47, where the half-finished, cracking foundation stood as a desolate monument to his arrogance and greed. He called Kelechi, his voice strong but humble. "The stage is set, brother. I need you and the family to stand with me. I need the land to see the brothers reunited in truth." Kelechi agreed immediately, recognizing this final act was the true price of redemption.
The day of the Itu Ulo ritual arrived, hot and intensely dry. The dusty air, symbolic of the barrenness of Obina's former life. The entire village gathered on the desolate, scarred 20-acre plot. The 3 ancient Iroko logs, massive and mysterious, lay on the ground, silent and waiting. Obina stood before the crowd, dressed not in his expensive suits, but in simple white traditional attire, looking thin, weary, but entirely honest. Kelechi and his family stood beside him, the symbol of the restored covenant. Obina took the microphone handed to him by the village head. He looked first at the splitting concrete foundation, then at the assembled villagers, and finally he looked directly at the cleared, empty space where the Aku shrine used to stand. "My people, sons and daughters of Okoro," Obina began, his voice surprisingly firm but thick with emotion. "I sinned against the land. I sinned against my father's memory. I sinned against my brother, Kelechi. I took the disease of Lagos greed and deliberately buried it in our sacred earth. I confess that I forged the papers, and I stole this land from my brother and from our ancestors." He then knelt down, picking up a handful of ash from the cleared shrine area where the earth still felt cold. "I ask the ancestors and the land spirits to forgive me. Let this ash, the residue of my own destroyed life, be the foundation of a new life, a new covenant built only on truth." As Obina rubbed the black ash onto his forehead and chest, completing the final, humbling act of contrition, a loud, sustained creaking and groaning sound filled the air, drawing all eyes to the 3 massive Iroko logs. The logs, which had been lying still and inert, began to roll. Slowly, deliberately, and with an undeniable powerful force,
They rolled away from the failed building site. They moved across the scarred earth and aligned themselves perfectly in a solemn triangle where the Akwu shrine used to stand, creating a natural, ancient boundary marker. Simultaneously, the large splitting foundation behind them suddenly stopped cracking. The deep fissures closed over, settling into a deathly stillness. The villagers gasped in collective awe. It was the clear, undeniable ancestral acceptance. The 3 Iroko logs, the powerful spirit of the family legacy, had returned to guard the shrine. Obinna stood up, tears streaming down his face, his body trembling, but this time not from cold, but from profound relief. The ancestral cold was gone. The chilling silence was absolute. The shame remained, but the curse was completely lifted. The land spirit was finally at peace. Kelechi walked forward and embraced his brother, holding him tight. "You are forgiven, Obinna. You are completely home."
Obinna's financial situation was devastating, but he had something priceless: his brother and his peace. Kelechi, now the official manager of the Okoro Ancestral Land Trust and the only person with the legal and spiritual authority to approve sales or construction, took the lead. He supervised the liquidation of the remaining construction materials on the land. He took the 20 million naira proceeds and meticulously divided it. He handed exactly half to Obinna. "This is your seed money, brother," Kelechi said, looking Obinna straight in the eye. "Not for contracting. You have a strategic, ruthless mind for finance, and we need it. You will manage the ancestral trust. You will protect the land and my family's future from men like you used to be. You will be our guardian of the legacy, protecting what is sacred." Kelechi, with his own half, rebuilt the small teacher's cottage, slightly larger this time, and built a modest but structurally sound traditional shrine around the 3 Iroko logs, ensuring they were protected. He knew that the true reward of his victory was not the money, but the ability to sleep in true peace on the land of his ancestors, his children safe and secure. Obinna, systematically stripped of his arrogance and ego, finally found his true, purposeful calling as the guardian of the legacy. He used his immense business acumen and connections to secure grants and partnerships, not for private gain, but for community enrichment. He successfully converted the other half of the 20 acres into a state-of-the-art cocoa research and training center, a non-profit venture ensuring the land would generate sustainable wealth for the entire community and future generations, not just his family. He worked from a small, modest shared office in the village hall, driving a beat-up pickup truck for logistics. He never complained about the loss of his Rolls-Royce. He had traded a fake, destructive private empire for a real, constructive public legacy. Kelechi, the patient teacher, continued teaching history, but now he also instructed the local farmers at the new center on modern sustainable farming and harvesting techniques, rapidly making the family cocoa plantation flourish like never before. He was the true builder of their fortune, not with steel and concrete, but with wisdom, patience, and unwavering integrity, solidifying the family's standing.
2 years later, the ancestral land was vibrant, productive, and respected. The Cocoa Center was famous across the state. Obinna and Kelechi stood together on the wide new veranda of Kelechi's cottage, the air thick with the sweet smell of ripening cocoa. The sun was setting over the lush plantation. They watched Kelechi's young, robust son playing happily near the shrine, where the 3 Iroko logs now stood, covered in moss and revered by the entire community. "Thank you, Kelechi," Obinna said softly, his voice full of genuine affection and respect. "You saved my soul. You used my own greed to strip me bare and rebuild me right, brick by painful brick." Kelechi put a warm, heavy hand on his elder brother's shoulder. "The land saved us both, Obinna. We are the Okoro brothers. We are stronger together. This land is proof that honesty is the only foundation that will not split or crumble." The strange, terrifying things had stopped entirely. The curse was broken. The peace was profound and permanent. The ancestral land, once desecrated, was now a source of healing, community abundance, and a renewed, unbreakable covenant of brotherhood. Obinna, the former contractor, had finally learned the most important lesson, that a true legacy is measured not by height, but by depth. My people, come close. Let us reason together. This story is not just for entertainment. It is a mirror for our own lives. Lesson number 1, the price of the earth. Never believe that you can buy or steal what is truly sacred. Ancestral land holds a spiritual warranty, a contract with time. Obinna thought he was wealthy, but he quickly found that the cost of his lie was his sanity, his physical health, and his precious sleep. The earth, the ultimate witness, will always reject a foundation built on fraud. Lesson number 2. Restitution is a ladder, not a hole. Confession is a necessary first step, but true restitution, giving back what you stole and then adding lasting value to it for the community, is the only way to climb out of the deep pit of guilt. Obinna didn't just return the money. He dedicated his life and his formidable skills to protecting what he had once sought to destroy. That dedication was his complete redemption. Lesson number 3. The quiet power. Kelechi, the humble teacher, armed with only truth and patience, defeated the city contractor and his 500 million naira. Never despise the quiet, consistent, moral power of a righteous heart. When you are fighting for truth and heritage, the ancestors are your silent, powerful army.
Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been cheated by a family member over an inheritance? Or have you witnessed a great wrong being righted through an act of genuine, humbling restitution? Tell me your story in the comments. Let us encourage each other. And listen, if this story touched your spirit, if it gave you hope, please share it. Send it to your brother, your sister, your best friend. You don't know who is fighting a deep financial or spiritual battle, needing to hear that their vindication and peace is coming. Don't forget to subscribe and follow this page. We tell stories of truth, justice, and the deep Nigerian reality every week. Join the community. I pray for everyone reading this. May every curse of the land be lifted from your family. May every hidden fraud and every lie be exposed by the clear light of truth. And may your honesty bring you a harvest of peace, sustainable wealth, and a lasting, honorable legacy. Go and succeed. Your testimony is next.